Monsieur, Anine, I am so proud to be here with you. I'm Sandy McLean Klockner, and as you might have seen in the chat, I'm in St. Louis, Missouri. And in the traditional way, I'll introduce myself by saying, Kamama Dawado in Cherokee, Wabashkipane, Si Indishnakas in Chippewa, Mangan Indorum, Indojiba Gete Ade Adonag. I live in the old trading town. You would know it as Cahokia. And then I will ask if I can indulge by saying that I'm with a fabulous team, and I'm going to pass the introductions on to my co-presenter.
Hello, friends. My name is Bevan Cohen, and I run Small House Farm in Central Michigan. I'm also the founder of the Michigan Seed Library Network. Our network and our incredible team of volunteers has helped to establish more than 125 seed libraries throughout our state, as well as the Midwest. And I also organize, along with my wife, the Central Michigan Seed Swap, which has become one of the largest seed swaps in the Midwest. And I'm really excited to have this opportunity to spend some time with all of you, to share some of my experiences and ideas, and to learn from all of you as well. So with that, let's pass it back to Sandy and get started, please.
So as I said, I'm here on the land that's known as Cahokia. And this was the trading town for Turtle Island. I'm trying to bring in a different point of view that some of you may or may not be aware of. So I'll say that I'm part of the Native Women's Care Circle here in St. Louis. And we do not have an Indian center here, but we do have a network of tribal people, families that we've used to support each other. So what I'd like to do, instead of showing you, that slide presentation and giving you, this percentage of this and that, is I want to draw you into my community and ask you to think about sharing part of your understanding of your community of seed keepers. So I'll start off by saying and encouraging you, use those reaction buttons. I'm looking for interaction. And since it gets very confusing if everyone is off mic, always do those hearts, those emojis. An example, when we're together and I see another person that's Wolf Clan, I usually put up, a little friend like that, a wolf. So add in those emojis, interact with us as you can on the chats. Our community, our seed keeper passed. So de facto, I became the seed keeper during COVID. And that means that I have a lot of seeds. And I am not by nature a seed keeper. I'm a forager. I'm learning to be an herbalist. But now I'm having a different relationship with plants because I'm now charged in our group with keeping seeds. Bevan, I don't know how you keep up with everything. And I'm going to be relying on some of his expertise to learn more. So if you've read a book called Braiding Sweetgrass, and if you have, I'm going to ask you, put your hand up on your screen or thumbs up in the chat. But Dr. Robin Wall Kemner has been making a connection between the natural world, which is her Haudenosaunee background, and her scientific world as a botanist. And a lot of times we are finding out in the scientific world that the things we thought of now have already been thought of for a millennia. So the seeds that I keep are personal to me. And that's part of what I want to share with you. Now, here's an example. Robin Wall Kimner says that in the language land, ki, K-I, means it, a thing, ki. So I usually start my day with this key. This key is a piece of mint that my great grandmother brought from Louisiana all the way up to St. Louis when she came. And this key grows on that land still. When you do that plural key, it's the word kin. So this kin, biologically, on a cellular level, has met my great-grandmother, my grandmother, my mother, and I, my son, my nephews, and another generation, my great niece, and our grandkids in the family. This plant on a cellular level, because it was touched by my family, has knowledge of us. So we keep this plant in our family. I'm drinking tea that's got that in it. I take the leaves from it and I eat those leaves. And I'm grateful that that plant has relationship with my family. And I have the duty and the responsibility to that plant to take care of it. We have mint and we have a wild grapevine that are ours to take care of. And that's something is a trust. And in many Native communities, there are people that are seed keepers in the not modern. And we not only care for our plants for the present, keeping them for our future as well. And I apologize for those entry sounds, but I'll keep going. So I'm asking you to think of the plants and seeds as kin to us, K-I-N. It's a word that's fallen out of our existence. We don't say, oh, that's my kin. We'll say, oh, I'm family, or I'm related to them. But tribal people have always known the importance of kin and how easily you can make someone kin, whether it be nowadays, all those dogs and cats in our family have become kin. You get married. Like Bevan said, I did this with my wife. She's kin. They take an important role. So I want people to know that there is an important role that you'll be taking if you are keeping those seeds. It's not just something you pick up a packet from some company and it's a thing you own. It's a responsibility and a reciprocal gift. They will give us some things and we can become passionate about them because they're our kin. And if we do our job right, we're going to have an association with other people who see our plants that way. One of the wonderful things I noticed is that in our photos, Bevan and I both have important things in our photos. Bevan was telling me, I was at Baker's Creek and I was with these beautiful eggplants, and you could hear the love of plants in his voice. I know some of you have special seeds that you have kinship with. Well, I ask you to take that in a serious way. As we do acknowledgements on what lands we're on, we're also adding in that we're not going to take for granted that this land has memory of those seeds and those plants. Let me give you an example. We're associated, our Native Women's Care Circle is associated by kinship with my cousin's tribe, the Pawnee. And the Pawnee tribe has a seed keeper named Deb Echohawk. So Deb had the task of keeping seeds for her tribe, but without tribal support. This was years ago. And so my cousin Sherry, who is Deb's cousin, would drive from St. Louis to Pawnee, Oklahoma, and bring back these boxes of corn and beans. And my cousin Sherry would say, hey, why don't you all come over and we'll have a movie night? She lied, because what we ended up doing was sorting seeds and taking corn off the cob and opening up peas and beans and putting them all into envelopes and all those things. And we'd never get to the movies. And our hands would be swollen and dry because, you know, those of you who have done it, those seeds take some of us with them. And then she would drive it back to Oklahoma and Deb would go, yay. So they tried planting some of this Pawnee corn. I'm going to tell you that that corn is not in any booklet, the catalog that you'll see. The tribe has kept that to themselves. And Debbie told me a couple of weeks ago, I asked her about that, and she said it's the difference between heritage seeds and ancestral seeds, that these seeds are theirs to take care of, and they're not going to let them go in some catalog. What they're using them for is feeding their children. Some of the first foods are from these plants, and they're feeding their elders at elder care with that. So often in tribal ways, I know amongst my godmother's people, the Anishinaabe, the Ojibwe, they say wild rice, which is a grain, is your first and your last food that ties us to this land. And I think that's a beautiful way to see it. So that's not something that's being shared, okay? When we went to plant some of this Pawnee corn in Oklahoma, it wouldn't grow. So a seed is like a microchip. And we put that microchip into the ground and it couldn't be read. If any of you have ever tried opening a PDF or something in the wrong format, it's not going to work. So we allied with some farmers in Nebraska, and they planted that corn for us, and it grew. That also meant that since Deb needed help, we from St. Louis journeyed up to Nebraska and helped pick corn. Those farmers have now an allyship, a relationship with the Pawnee corn. And then they brought the corn back to Oklahoma. And if any of you know about Oklahoma, one of the wonderful things besides powwows they have is steam engine shows. Yes, it's a big thing there. Football, powwows, and steam engine shows. So Deb approached the steam engine folks, and they, for years, have ground the corn for her so that it can be fed to the people. They're not native, just like the farmers in Nebraska aren't, but they're allies, and they're part of that whole thing that makes this work. It wouldn't work without a way to grind the corn or plant the corn. So there's a place for everybody in the care of that seed. Needless to say, one of my favorite dishes is blue cornmeal mush. If you've ever had blue cornmeal mush or cornmeal mush, you should put it in the chat. Why did you have that? Is that an old thing, or did you learn it young? And do you use wood ash when you make that? Because I put wood ash into my cornmeal mush. And traditionally, what it does is it amps up the nutritional value of that corn. The same way that when we grow the 3 sisters, and really there are 4 sisters, Deb tells me, and I've done it that way with 4 sisters. I know some of you know corn, beans, squash, but the 4th sister is sunflower. Sunflower's roots are strong enough so that when those really bad storms come through Oklahoma, they were holding the corn into the ground. Literally, you could bend it all over, but the sunflower would keep everything anchored so that those plants survive. The corn provides the stalk for the beans, which adds nitrogen to the soil. And the squash, and in my case, at my house, I'm planting it in mounds, not in rows. That mound of squash and pumpkin for me keeps all the predators away. It's been done that way for a millennia. And one of the important things that I found out from Deb Echohawk and others is that we have to keep that biodiversity. We really have to fight to keep the biodiversity so that we have good soil, and that good biodiversity is going to keep away the pests, which means we don't have to use the insecticides and all those things that show up in our water as it drains off the land. So I'm asking you to, as you take care of your seeds, do it in a way that is with relationship. And also, I think we should talk about how to be good allies to different communities. So I'm going to stop there. You can look at Braiding Sweetgrass, the book by Dr. Robin Wall Kemner. I also look at another ethnobiologist. Her name is Linda Black Elk. And those are people that you can get some good information from. I'm a learner, I'm ignorant. I'm also looking to get questions, and then we'll be passing it on to Bevan.
There's a question in the chat for you, Sandy. Someone's asking about alleliopathic relationships and sunflowers in particular, and someone else has posted a comment about how some plants aren't affected in that relationship. Is there a way that you've experienced that alleliopathic relationship, that how plants interact and engage and build each other up? Is there something you've experienced in your seed encounters that help explain that magic to us?
And it's funny because I don't always have that same terminology. We can be speaking different things. But let me tell you about a healing, okay? I'm not a doctor, even though I play one in the first grade classroom. Yes, it's true. I had one of our firekeepers was ill, and we've been using elderberry. And that's something that, we really take for granted now. It's a big, the new medicine, everybody's taking elderberry. But we've used it for a millennia. So when the pandemic started, that was something that our elders told us to rely on. I've called up to White Earth, Minnesota, where some of my elders are, and I asked them, what do we have? And actually, I asked it not this time, but when we had that swine flu breakout. And what I was told is you already have everything you need, use what you have. So again, for this pandemic, Uncle said, you know the answer, don't you? I said, yes, sir. We already have everything we need, use what you have. So we were using elderberry. But at first, the medical authorities came out and said, this isn't great. Don't use that. It's got something, you know, this, that, and the other, and scientifically is bad. And Uncle said, you have everything you need. Use what you have. He said, we've studied this and developed it just like corn for millennia. And if it didn't work, we would have stopped using it. You don't need some scientists to tell you that. Use what you have.
It's a great example when we think about
Yes.
how the relationships work. Someone else indicated that their tribe had 7 sisters. So it's amazing when you think about what's in our environment and how we contribute in those relationships. There's all kinds of comments in the chat about blue corn, and there's some really oh, I was trying to, sorry, I missed it. I scrolled too fast, but some great comments about family connections. And there's a question about Hope Red Dye Amaranth in the chat. My mother grew up in Cleveland, Oklahoma, says Mildred, and her family always grew what looks like Hope Red Dye Amaranth. How did it get there? I thought it was a Southwestern plant. Do you have any ideas for us, Sandy?
So remember that Cahokia was that trading place. And my cousins some of my cousins are Medewan, which is a spiritual practice up by the Great Lakes and into Canada. Well, they use conch shells. But how did conch shells get up to the Great Lakes? There was a trading system. And that's what I'm hoping we do with our seeds now. We reestablish some of those trading routes. Amaranth is, especially the green amaranth, very powerful nutritional value. Really hard to process. I've done it by hand. That being said, it is a sacred plant amongst some of those in South America, but it's found here. One of the challenges is that with erasure, they would attack the food systems to get rid of people. And that's still being done in lots of ways. We've got to really be conscious about keeping that biodiversity there, about letting people have access to the foods that they need. And we are all different people. And that biology is something that firekeeper, he couldn't take elderberry. I said, well, you were up at Standing Rock. What did they give you there? He said, this. So that's what we gave him. His body wasn't geared for elderberry. And with, the pharmaceutical companies, they're taking derivatives from plants, but they're giving us a generic amount. And what's right for me isn't the same thing that's right for Carol or for all these other people here. So one of the responsibilities that we have, that reciprocal relationship, is to know what our plants can do, to know that kin, and know that amaranth belongs here, as does corn, as does buffalo gourd, which is being eradicated, just as bull thistle is a medicine. It's illegal in the state of Missouri because it's a weed. So,
oh, Sandy, you should see the chat. We could talk all day about this.
we could. So I'm going to
save a couple of these questions, if you don't mind, until when Bevan joins us on the screen too, because I think there's some that would really do well with both of your perspectives. Thank you for your amazing contributions and your generosity, and I can't wait to chat more. Over to you, Bevan.
Oh, that was fantastic. Well, let me get my screen up here. I'm going to share some slides, folks. I love all those things that you just got done saying, Sandy. Like, I think it's so important in our seed work that we have our mind right, so to speak, really have ourselves in the right zone. mentally and emotionally and spiritually. And I think that the things that you covered there are critical for all of us to be successful seed savers. But I do have some slides, so I got some bullet points and things. So let's get into this. I think it's important that we know as we talk about seed exchanges that a seed exchange takes really many different forms, and people have been exchanging seeds, since the dawn of agriculture, of course, whether it be from one hand to the next individually or from one community to the next. Seeds have changed hands and locations in a multitude of different ways. May it be just the two of us on a back porch sharing some beans with each other and chatting, or seeds that travel with us as we move from one community to the next, whatever it might be. I think one of the most interesting forms of seed exchange that I've been thinking about lately is the exchange of seeds that we have with our own gardens, right? In the springtime, we take a handful of seeds out into our gardens and put them into the soil. And then in the fall, we exchange those seeds for new seeds that our garden gives back to us. And our garden doesn't just give us the same seeds that we gave to it, it gives us better seeds, right? Seeds that have adapted to our microclimates or adapted to our soil. They've changed and they've become better. And as that reciprocal relationship that Sandy was just talking about, that's what's happening in our gardens every time we choose to save our seeds. It's a wonderful exchange that's happening. Now, seed exchanges are very different than seed banks. And I'm sure that there's a session going on today at some point that's going to cover this, but I just wanted to touch on it real quick. A seed bank, as you can see here, Svalbard, right? The Doomsday Vault. And in a seed bank is long-term storage. These are seeds that are placed into a seed bank or into a seed vault and meant to be there for a long time, stored in case of whatever. And then we have access to these seeds later. And this is very different than a seed exchange. Whatever form a seed exchange might take, it's constantly in motion, constantly moving with new, fresh, updated seeds. And I think that's very important that we understand the difference between storing seeds in one place for a long time and continuing to share new seeds with people. The greatest seed bank that we could ever consider is in the soil, in our gardens. When we continue to plant these seeds and select from the best performing, strongest, and most wonderful plants, save those seeds and share them with our communities. Some of us are probably familiar with seed libraries, and I'm sure that there's a session about seed libraries. There's probably a bunch of them today. And a seed library, I'm not going to get into the nuts and bolts of how it works, of course, but it is in essence a seed exchange, right? This is where seeds are exchanged amongst the community. In this sort of a scenario, the seed library functions as a hub, right? A centrally located hub. And folks come to the seed library to check out the seeds and take them home, hopefully then saving seeds in the fall and bringing them back to the centralized location that is the seed library. We could think of it kind of as a seed bank because there's this one central hub where seeds are stored, but they're not seeds stored for a long time. They're new, fresh seeds coming and going all the time as that community continues to grow, save, and share the seeds, exchanging them amongst each other through the seed library. But this is probably the seed exchange that we're most likely talking about here is the seed swap, right? This is what I'm going to get into. We're going to get into the nuts and bolts, as they said, to talk about how to organize a seed swap. This is my favorite type of seed exchange. It's certainly the most fun, right? And unlike a seed library where we're talking about one central hub where the seeds are always at and people come and go, a seed swap is a one-time only type of thing where everybody gathers together to exchange their seeds, share their stories, learn from each other, and build community. Live and in person right now happening, right? That sort of thing. Now, the seed swap that we do here in Michigan, centrally located right in the middle of the mitten, right? The last swap that we had more than 700 people that came to it, and they came from all over the place. They came from Michigan, they came from Canada, they came from Wisconsin, Illinois, Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky, Tennessee, New York State. People gathered from all over. They came to this one central location to exchange seeds with each other, right? It's the greatest form of seed dispersal that I have ever seen. Imagine I'm got a table at the seed swap, right? And all these people from all these places come to my table and I share with them all of the seeds that I've grown in my gardens. And they take these seeds back to their communities, to all these different places, taking these seeds along these routes to these new homes, right? It's the greatest form of seed exchange that there is. So in the time that we've got, and I want to make sure that we got time for Q&A, I'm going to just go through the nuts and bolts of how you can organize a groovy seed swap just like this for your community, right? Here's the quick benefits, and we already know this, so I'm not going to beat this horse too much. But when we have a seed swap, when we save and share our seeds amongst our community, it gives us a local and reproducible food supply. Local seeds, right? Food is only as local as the seed that it grows from. If you want local food, you need local seed, right? And that's what we do when we have a localized seed exchange. It gives us the improved flavors and varieties because we only save the seeds from the tastiest tomatoes or the juiciest melons or the earliest peppers or the most beautiful flowers or whatever it is that you like, right? When you select these traits from your garden, you save those seeds, your garden will continue to give you and your community all of those traits season after season, which gives us the ability to maintain that seed bank. Whether we want to store it in a vault, store it in the soil, store it at our seed library, it doesn't matter to me. When we store these locally adapted seeds, that gives us self-reliance. Not as individuals, of course, but as communities. We're going to organize a seed swap for our community. These are the things that we need to think about. And these are all the things I'm going to talk about right here really quick. Securing the venue. We're going to talk about acquiring seeds, the community collaboration that we need to make our seed exchange succeed, how to organize our exchange, budgeting for success, and how to market your exchange, right? And you're going to see through these slides that there's certainly some overlap from one thing to the next. That's how everything in life is. But let's go through. The first thing that we need to consider is securing our venue. And there's a number of different ways, different places that we could host our seed swaps, right? We can think about community centers, art galleries. And this list here that you're seeing, I've been to a seed swap in every single one of these types of places, right? Art galleries, farmers markets, whether they're indoors or outdoors, nature centers, fairgrounds, coffee shops. We could do them outdoors. We could do them at somebody's home, right? I have a tendency to make everything as big and grand as possible every time I try to organize an event, but that's not necessarily always the best way to do things. Sometimes we want to keep it small and intimate, right? We don't have to make the biggest event you've ever seen. That's not what matters. What matters is people coming together to share their seeds and to learn from each other. Even if it's just 10 or 15 people that gather together to share the crops that they've grown, maybe share some food. It's a wonderful thing, right? But look into these venues and see if you can find one preferably that's going to donate the space, right? We've always been blessed with our seed swaps that we've been lucky enough to not have to charge or charge money to get in or pay money to be there, right? That free exchange, again, here's another form of exchange, I suppose, of our time and space. So look to these places and see if you can find somebody like-minded, farmers market or whatever it might be, that's going to allow you to kind of come together as a community and just share some time together, maybe for free. We have to consider how we want to acquire our seeds. Maybe. Now at our seed swap, we have a community seed table. Where it's seeds that seed companies have donated or from my garden or whatever it might be, that's free for everybody to come and take, right? It's a free come and get them type of thing. And that's always nice. And I want to make sure that everybody has access to seeds. I think that that's very important, that there shouldn't be any barriers between people and their seeds, but you don't have to do that. You don't have to feel obligated to provide free seeds for everybody, right? You don't necessarily have to spend the time and resources to acquire seeds just to give them away. But if you want to, if that's important to you, there's a number of different ways that you can get your hands on seeds, right? You can go to get donations from seed companies. There's a list as long as my arm of seed companies that would be more than happy to donate seeds. The best time to contact seed companies would be in the fall, when it's towards the end of the season and they're looking to clear out their stock. How about your own garden? Of course, is a great place. Bringing your own seeds is a wonderful thing to do. Connecting with your local garden clubs, your local farmers, your fellow seed savers. There's a lot of folks saving seeds in your communities. Our very first year that we had our seed swap, we had it in an old art gallery. This would have been, 7 or 8 years ago. And 100 people showed up to this thing. And they weren't people that I knew or anything. They just heard about it word of mouth. And up until that moment, I thought that there was just me and a handful of my friends that were really into seed saving. I didn't realize that there was so many of us in the community. But once we kind of unlocked that door and let people in, they just started coming out of the woodwork. It was incredible to realize this community of seed stewards that were right outside my back door, and I didn't even know. Pretty awesome stuff. Which brings me to this next slide, which is community collaboration. And this is the most important part of the whole thing, right? Connecting with your community. They will help you to make this seed swap bigger and better than you could ever do on your own. No man is an island unto himself, right? We need to build community so we can do all these great things. So look at these like-minded folks. Master Gardeners is at the top of the list because Master Gardeners are awesome. They're Master Gardeners for a reason. But one of the most beautiful things about them as far as volunteer goes, is that Master Gardener needs to put in a certain amount of volunteer hours every year to keep their Master Gardener status. And they're always looking for projects. So tap into your local Master Gardeners and they will come help work your event. They will work the door, they will swap seeds, they will help you package seeds. They will do so many things. Set some Master Gardeners up at a table and let people just come and ask them questions. They love that. Everybody benefits from that. Our local garden clubs, our herb guilds, community gardens, reach out to your online seed community. We're all connected to each other on the internet now. Reach out to some of your fellow seed savers online, and you'll realize that we're just 3 steps away from everybody in the world, right? Quickly, we can build a network of seed savers that way. And always reach out to like-minded organizations. They may not even be gardening related. At our seed swap, we have a conservation group that'll come, our local recyclers, they come out, they set up a great kids activity booth, you know, really cool stuff. So just folks that are into the earth in one form or another, they're going to be into the seed swap, and they're going to not only participate in the seed swap to make it a better event, they'll also help you spread the word about it. Now we have to think about how we want to organize our seed swap, right? And again, this could be as unique as the individual. That's the beauty of these sorts of things, right? Every community is unique. Every seed is unique. There's so much diversity here, right? So we can do whatever we want, whatever's going to work the best for us and that sort of thing. But we need to understand a few basics of organization here, right? How long do we want our event to be? Some seed swaps are only a couple of hours long, you know, and that's perfectly fine. Our seed swap goes from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. It's 5 hours long. You know, so that gives everybody plenty of time to show up, spend time at the table. We have educational programming all day. There's a lot of things happening. It's really almost like a mini seed conference. But you're going to need to decide the length of the event, not only for yourself, how much time do you want to spend? How much time is the venue going to let you be there? You know, there's certainly some factors here. Do you want your seed swap to be a free swap? One that's swap only, one that you allow people to sell? A lot of people have a lot of opinions on how they want this to be. But I think that it's important that we consider the people around us and not just ourselves. I know some folks that are diehard that seeds should always be free, and that's perfectly fine if that's what you want. But some folks that grow and offer seeds, the seeds may be free, but their time and resources, inputs may not be free, right? So everybody's got their own point of view on this, but you need to determine that right away, how you want your seed swap to be organized. You're going to need volunteers. You're going to need to understand how to set up the room. Are you going to offer programming? The programming that we've offered, we had, let's see, John Kuykendall come to speak. We had Rowan White. We have Vivian Sansor from the Seed Library in Palestine come. And those are a huge draw. Not only do they share their wisdom with us, but it brings in a lot of people that are interested in hearing these speakers. It's become a big part of our event. And then, of course, you have to understand how to manage an event. That's pretty much all these bullet points coming up to this. You have to budget for success, because even if the venue lets you be there for free, there's other things that are going to cost you money, most certainly. You know, maybe the venue, maybe equipment rental, whatever it might be, speaker fees, if you're having speakers come, signage, seed packaging, you know, there's all these little things and they add up quite quickly. So unless you're going to fund the whole thing out of your pocket, which is what I did the first few years of our seed swap, you might want to look into some donations or possibly some sponsors, right? And again, these like-minded organizations, when we're talking about community collaboration, they can become sponsors as well. The Michigan Organic Food and Farm Alliance originally came to our seed swap to set up a table to sell books. They loved what we were doing so much, they've become a fiscal sponsor, and they help fund some of our biggest speakers, thanks to that partnership that we've been able to develop, that community collaboration, right? And then we have to market our event. There's a lot of different ways that we can market things. Of course, social media, that's the big thing everybody wants to do. Word of mouth is possibly the best advertising that there is for anything. Like I said, our first seed swap, we had 100 people come to it. We didn't have a Facebook page or anything, nothing like that at all. It was literally just word of mouth, and that's what got all these people out. It's a little old fashioned for radio and print ads, but that's still a thing that exists. There's a lot of people that still listen to the radio, believe it or not. And these radios will definitely let you talk about your free, sweet community event on the radio. They're looking for content for the radio, and they will talk about your stuff on the radio for sure. Of course, posters, we hang up some posters, and just making sure you spread the word. Mention your seed swap to as many people as you can. Bring it up in conversation. People are going to get excited. They're going to start talking about it. And next thing you know, you're going to need a bigger venue because you've packed the place. I burned through that pretty quickly, folks, because I wanted to make sure we had time for Q&A here, because that's really the most important thing, is to make sure you guys have the specific information that you need. This has been recorded. You can always come back and look at my slides if you need to, whatever it might be. I just want to say this one thing before we go to the Q&A. One of my favorite things about the seed swap or any form of seed exchange is that everybody participates, right? People of different backgrounds, ethnicities, different religions, different political leanings, whatever it might be. When we come together to exchange seeds, we don't talk about any of those things. We don't think about our differences. We think about the thing that brings us together, our commonality, which is the seeds, right? And the food that we grow from our seeds. That's a powerful thing. And we come to realize that we're asking ourselves this question every time. Are we saving the seeds, or are the seeds saving us? And I think we know the answer to that. It's all the time that I have. Let's get into the Q&A, Jolene. Thank you guys so much for letting me be a part of this event. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you.
Evan, I got so caught up listening and taking notes that I forgot I was moderating. That was amazing. There's a question in the Q&A, and I'm burning to know pros and cons of a fall seed swap. I've never been brave enough to host one. What do you think?
So we've done some fall seed swaps. Bill Best down in Berea, Kentucky hosts one of the best fall seed swaps that you can go to, most certainly. It can be a little tricky for folks for a couple of reasons, mostly that we're all still busy harvesting seeds. It's a busy time of year. Most fall seed swaps that I've gone to have been smaller than the spring swaps. In the spring, everybody's very excited to get out. Our schedules might be a little bit more free, but the flip side of that is some of our spring seed swaps have gotten unexpected winter weather, which has been hard for folks, so there's certainly pros and cons to them, but in my experience, spring swaps seem to be the most successful.
That's good to know, especially if you're kind of going into this, right? Because starting off successfully is really going to help keep people motivated, but at the same time, knowing you can still do a fall swap, it's not impossible, kind of is pretty inspiring too. So right now we're at 7 minutes to the hour. We want to leave a moment or two at the very end. Sandy has some closing words for us, and we have a couple of slides to share on behalf of the Seed Summit. But I'm going to ask if Sandy will unmute and come back to us. Sandy, while you were speaking earlier, someone asked a really interesting question, and I'm going to paraphrase it a little bit because I thought it would be great to have both you and Bevan's perspective on this. And so when we're talking about reestablishing trade routes, and I've heard other people refer to it as traditional food pathways, how do we reestablish and continue the movement and mobility of seeds, but at the same time be good caretakers of that seed? We do have worries in this world about commercialization and access and novel trait registration. And these are really valid concerns. So I'm going to throw it over to you too. Maybe Bevan, you were just up. So if you want to unmute and hit it first, and Sandy, if you want to share your ideas on this, I think it's really relevant to the conversations I'm hearing today at the summit.
Yes, Bevan, you get the first turn.
Okay, I'm not sure if I quite understood the question. If you could give me a quick synopsis of the question again.
Sure. So if we are reestablishing traditional trade routes or traditional seed pathways, if we're increasing the mobility of seeds amongst people, how are we good guardians of that seed so that we're aware in this world today there are external constraints such as commercialization or registration of novel traits that can remove seed from the people's hands?
Oh, okay. So I would say first and foremost by asking questions. It's important that we have great communication. I think to help us understand other people's points of view. Sometimes it can be difficult for some of us to see other people's points of views without asking questions. And I say that as somebody from a European descendant in a land of indigenous seed savers. I am not in a place to even understand what's the right thing to say and do sometimes without maybe asking questions or getting out of the way. I think that when we frame a question like you did, to me, it makes me think of, we think of the indigenous seed savers of this land as something that happened in the past. And that's not the case at all. It's something that's actively happening right now. And I think that the most important thing that we could do is recognize that the indigenous trade routes and seed exchanges that we would consider things of the past are of the present, and they are of the future. And the most powerful thing that we can do is maybe just get out of the way and ask questions and let those folks do what they need to do, I guess would be my answer.
Bevan, you are brilliant. I agree exactly with what you said. And communication, again, just like Bevan said, is one of the important things. During the pandemic, did you all notice that seeds became scarce? And literally, they told us we could not use seeds. And you can't tell the people whether they are native to this land or naturalized to this land. You cannot tell us what we do with seeds. It's an important thing. So the people band together and establish those trade routes. And if you're talking about setting up seed swaps, you don't need any place to give you a venue. You can set up a tent at a park and have a seed swap. What are they going to do? It's a picnic. We're having a seed swap. The big thing is to be aware of different people's needs. And that includes everything from the food deserts and giving people a chance. I can't wait to start my garden this year, because I know that the things that are really expensive out there, I'm going to be growing. I'm not quite ready to have chickens, but almost. And those are the things that we can do. The people take care of the seeds. And even though they have that, that place up in the Arctic that's supposed to save everything, Native people have kept their seeds safe. When the fields were being burned, they were being eradicated, and seed keepers had the job of keeping seeds, and that's what we do. So I hope that is also what you take as a charge, getting those seed swaps there, making sure that you, like Devin said, have a diversity of people, ages. Teach your kids how to use seeds. My son is in his 30s and he finally said, Mom, aren't you gonna give me my plants for the spring? Dude, you're 34. Sure, and we use ours for different purposes, but he's not learned how to talk to the tobacco plants that we use or the sage plants. And I want him to have it for his children. So teach your children. And as a teacher, an educator, don't put it on. I'm a first grade teacher. I like to teach reading, math. If you give me one more thing to do, even though I teach about seeds and planting, but families have to do it. Grandma,
That's so important.
cousins, not just put it on to one more institution. It's our responsibility and our joy to not only do it, but pass it on.
I've got,
I'll end.
I think that's so vital. And I think we're so close to out of time, but there's one, this response has really addressed several of the questions in the chat and really initiated some great conversation. And there's one more question that I just have to get to before we go through our end, because I think it's important to hear both your perspectives. How do we organize seeds at a seed swap? So we've got someone who's talking to us about nuts and bolts and how to get it done and how important it is to do the work well. And we've got someone talking to us about the responsibilities of receiving seed. So I'm going to give you each like 30 seconds. So it's a quick one, I'm sorry, but how do you organize seeds at a seed swap, Sandy?
I'm going to say what we've done is we start small. And it's in a dining room, it's in at a park, it's in a classroom. Start small. And Devin said it. Devin said it. everything just exponentially just grows and grows. But if you start small and bring in more people, it's going to take care of itself. Let your community help you.
That's so important, isn't it? Let things happen. Okay, Bevan, how do we organize seeds at a seed swap? 30 seconds. I'm sorry.
At our community seed table, I like to organize the seeds by plant family. I find that that's the easiest way to organize stuff for people to find. And sometimes they are just incredibly amused by learning new things about plants, like finding out all the different plants that are in the Brassicaceae family, the lots of different brassicas. And so they're learning stuff while they're getting their seeds. And that's a fun way to organize it as well. I saw there was a few other questions about, best practices for organizing seed swaps. And we don't necessarily have time to get into that for sure. But I think Carol probably put all of my links at some point into the chat. So if you guys find those, link up with me, connect with me, contact me, and I will be more than happy to answer questions and help you get a seed swap started for anything we haven't been able to touch on today.
There's so much we haven't been able to touch on today, but so much amazing conversation happening in the chat. Please refer to it. There's some great links there, some great resources. I'm just going to quickly turn over to our seeds library and so right, here we go. So just pointing out a couple of campaigns. There is a problem, please note, with the link right now, but you're going to receive an update from Eventbrite with the 1 Million Seed Savers campaign. There's a big world and we need everyone's seed saving and we need everyone's perspective in seed saving. Well, we appreciate your feedback. Participation is important, and hearing about what's worked for you, what you need from us, how we grow, how we move forward is really important. So please fill in the session survey. I believe there's links to it in the chat. And also there is the opportunity for us to join together with a special streaming from Dr. Shiva. There is a $10 charge. The link's been sent out to you, the link's in the chat. I'm going to turn it back over to you, Sandy, and I'm going to use the words that we've been taught here in the place that I live. And we've been taught to say Imsit Nokama, which is all my relations, all the living things, the trees, the air. And Walaliak is thank you, because the opportunity to learn from you all and the energy you shared and contributed inspires, and that's the change that matters the most. So your human energy and your effort is greatly appreciated. Over to you, Sandy, and many thanks for all of your effort and time, everyone.
My friends, I'm going to say Wado in Cherokee, and I'm going to say Miigwech in Anishinaabemowin. We do Kaunishinam. Help us, pity us, love us unconditionally, and we should do the same for each other. We do Kaunishinam, unconditional love and help for each other. And Get a Windaman is the same as Mustafiasan. More important, everything comes back to the water, you all. Everything. As much as you are caretakers of the seeds, those little microchips, you're also caretakers because we're all on this land together. Take care of the land, take care of the water, and it will take care of us. Danadaga Ani, until we meet again, it's a small circle. And thank you all for your time. We are so grateful for all that you've given us. Thank you for being seed keepers, whether you are now or you're going to be. Do those swaps. Get in touch with Bevan. He'll help. Danadaga Ani, Gigawit, and in Ojibwe, it's oh my gosh, I'll just say Gigawabaman. Until we meet again.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes, I'm going to close it out.